Hello, hi there, welcome to Strong Talks, and today we are going to be discussing hacks to get into shape. So obviously we have just had Easter, the weather is hopefully starting to get better, and we're all really starting now to think about how we can but just about being stronger and a bit healthier. So we are going live with Zana, and we are going to be talking about some hacks that cover nutrition. There she is. Hi, Zana.
Hello.
Hello. So I'm just going to finish just explaining that today we're going to be talking to you about some of your hacks to get into shape, and that's going to cover a couple of points on nutrition, a couple of points on supplements, and then a couple of points on the training. Now these are, you've obviously been working in the industry, sorry, dare I say it, for 30 years plus. But you have you've got all the hacks and all the tips that you can share with us for how to get in shape relatively quickly, haven't you?
I definitely do. Yes, and I think we decided today, let's try and keep this simple so that that they can be grabbed and used,
Yes.
because we could go
Yeah.
through quite a lot, but even
Yes.
the small ones that we're going to go through they really can make a difference. They really can.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So, shall we kick off today with nutrition?
Yes, why
Yeah.
not?
So
I'm just
there's a
I
couple, I know that there's a couple of your hacks that you have spoken about previously. So I've written down mind the gap
Yep.
and getting your breakfast right. Breakfast right.
You're very fast, right? Yes, and I love that way of expressing it. So the mind the gap one, anybody who's heard me before will hear me saying this so often. It is so much more important than you think. I remember years ago as a teenager having a friend who could never, in fairness, looking back, she wasn't in bad shape, but you know us as teenagers and everyone's trying to do something. And she was always felt like she was challenged in losing weight, and she really didn't eat much.
Right.
She snacked.
Yeah.
And at the time, even I'd have to agree with her, you don't eat much. I couldn't understand it.
Yeah.
Only decades later, as you go into I have often looked back and thought back to that I'm going to say poor girl. She wasn't, in fairness. She was quite happy generally. But that challenge of the actually trying to lose. And that snacking does way more damage than we like to admit.
Right.
And it's not about calories. It particularly does more damage than we'd like to admit when you hit, okay, you're younger than me. I'm going to say our age. I'm just lumping everyone in this together. But once you hit into sort of what we traditionally call midlife, late
Yeah.
30s, 40s onwards.
Yeah.
And again, so many of you have heard me say this before, insulin levels tend to change in terms of we become a little bit more insulin resistant. We tend to release more than we really should. It tends to increase weight around the middle. And then suddenly fat loss is no longer about calories consumed.
Right.
It's just not.
Okay.
You can cut your calories in some cases right back, and you may still find you don't lose anything. So back to this mind the gap. Eating little amounts, like a handful of nuts or two or three crisps here, or a carrot or a few blueberries randomly in between. I mean, it might seem like nothing in terms of calorie content. So why should it make any difference at all? But it does kickstart your whole digestive system into play.
Okay.
And for example, if it's a little bit of fruit, you can have a little bit of an insulin rise, and now you're topping up the insulin that you're trying to get down.
Okay.
So it can make it very difficult to lose. And it's a disaster for energy in my experience too.
It's fascinating really, because I was the sort of person that would just like grab in mid-afternoon, just grab a handful of blueberries and be thinking, oh, but that's a really good thing for me to be having. It's a fruit, so it's not that bad. It's only a few. But really it is about bringing that insulin down and letting it flatline until you take it back up
That
again.
that kind of thing, exactly. Getting the blood sugar levels
Yeah.
down and steady.
Yeah.
When it comes to fat around the middle, above all, you want to aim to do that. So when you eat, it's
Yeah.
not about don't eat, and it's not even saying blueberries are bad for you. Just to be very, very clear. So you could have those with your breakfast or your yogurt or something, or if you want at 4 o'clock, you're hungry and you have to have something. I'm about to
Yeah.
answer that question. I like that question.
Okay.
Um, from Anna, the cup of tea with 150 ml of oat milk. It's a good question. So you can have those blueberries at any time with a meal. You could have some yogurt and fruit at around 4 o'clock if you feel you need to eat. This isn't about not eating. It's about considering every time you eat a
Yeah.
meal.
Yeah.
The oat milk concept and the milks concept, I'm a little bit on the fence. Obviously, the first thing is try and make sure if it's an oat milk or a nut milk that it's not sweetened, because then you're just getting a deliberate sugar hit. Um, I'm smiling. I'm going to ignore the political correctness of what I'm about to say next, because some people are very adamant we shouldn't be having almond milk for certain environmental reasons and so on and so forth. I'm not going into that conversation at all here. I'm just talking about nutritionally, very much so, nutritionally. The advantage of an unsweetened nut milk like almond milk over oat milk is there's virtually no sugars in the almond milk. So I think you get away with that. There's only protein and fat in a clean almond milk, whereas the oat milk has naturally occurring sugars. So there's a chance the oat milk, now I'm emphasizing a chance, the oat milk will cause a hit. And 150 ml isn't none, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
That's a reasonable amount, as opposed to a little splash.
Okay.
So I would, yes, feel that the oat milk that much probably would interfere with that process too.
Right. Okay. So it is thinking about drinks and what we're having as well as the
Yeah,
food, you know, so
it
we need
is.
to be careful of all of
Yeah.
that. Okay. Right. Okay. No.
With double cream. And I was sorry, I'm going to keep interrupting you with these questions. Coffee with double cream. The double cream won't affect the insulin, so that's great. So in regard to keeping the insulin steady, the double cream actually is good. At that point, because the conversation here now is about getting into shape, at that point, then you've got to ask yourself, do you need the extra calories that are going to come with the double cream? Now,
Right.
I do need to emphasize here, this live is about getting into shape. It's not about saying these things are wrong generally.
No. No.
It's about if you want to do a blitz to get into shape for summer, then it's worth kind of questioning these things. Very
Yeah.
well, Joanna.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that is, and it's, yeah, it is really focusing on that getting into shape quickly. It's that boost that you want at the moment, but it isn't an always on.
Yeah.
And so breakfast. Now we posted a video the other day about you and what you think you should have for breakfast. And honestly, we've had so many questions. People just want to know. Give breakfast recipes. But it's all about it doesn't matter what time of day you are having it. It is breaking your fast,
Yes.
isn't it?
Think
So
of the word.
so it
Yes.
can be 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it can be your effectively your lunch, but either way, making sure your first meal of the day is a good one.
Yeah, exactly. It is, it's the name, it's the meaning is in the title. It's break the
Yeah.
fast. So many people say to me, I don't have breakfast. And I'm thinking, well, you eat at some
Yeah.
point. It doesn't matter if it's the 6th of the evening, that's still the break of the fast.
Yeah.
So it's your first meal here we're really talking about. So if you do intermittent fasting, for a lot of people that mightn't be till 11 or 12. So it can often be more of a brunch than what would traditionally be considered a breakfast as such. And some people launch straight into what they would call lunch. Now, I totally understand the difference. I do get it. Breakfast, we think sort of eggs or maybe porridge, and lunch, we think maybe add in your vegetables and
Yeah.
more efficiently. But for the purpose of this, we're talking about the first meal. And I mentioned this in a live the other day. Again, when it comes to shape, and particularly if it's around the middle, so insulin related, you want to try and keep that insulin as steady as you can. You want to keep the blood sugar levels as steady as you can, particularly in the first half of the day. We tend, in the morning when we wake up, our bodies do give you a bit of a cortisol hit to try and wake you up, and there's a bit of a sugar relief to release naturally. So if you take your blood sugar levels in the morning, even if you haven't eaten, you might find they're slightly higher than they might be than you'd expect. Because you could say, well, I haven't eaten anything.
Yes.
But it's designed that way to get us going. So what you don't want to do is add in more sugar or get more sugar into the bloodstream on top of that, because your body's going to be releasing insulin to get it back down. And it does appear that the body changes, if you like. I mean, it does change as the day goes on, but it does appear that it changes in so much with of how it deals with the sugar levels and the insulin levels from morning to evening. In English, what it means is we want to keep the breakfast so that the sugar levels stay as steady as possible, so that the insulin stays as steady as possible, because if we get it up with that first meal, it's hard to get it back down.
Right.
And then your body is more likely to convert the calories and the sugars and the food into fat and belly fat than it would otherwise.
Right.
So you want to get the first meal right. And it means, very simply, if you're trying to get into shape and particularly lose the belly fat, Right. If you really want to do it and you want to do it as fast as you can, I would say just get rid of all carbs in the morning.
Okay.
And by carbs, I mean maybe you'll get away with a bit of fruit, but definitely for the moment, and I'm talking about short term, I'm not talking about forever, but breads, porridge, anything like that, get them all out. And people will say to me, what about rye bread? I think rye bread is great. I think it's well worth having in the morning with your breakfast. But if you're trying to do a blitz to get into shape quickly, just take it out. Just for the time being,
Yeah.
just for the moment. And then you would go for things like you could have eggs and avocado.
Mm-hmm.
You could have smoked salmon, a little bit of cream cheese. You don't have a massive amount of fat. It doesn't have to be a high fat plan now, but just a little bit in there to support you. You could even get some green vegetables in there instead of the starchy bread.
Yeah.
You could you really could bring some broccoli or you could bring a salad in with that first thing if you like. You will get away with yogurt and fruit. And you could say to me, but there's carbohydrate and sugars in them. There are, but it's quite low glycemic. And people do tend to get away with that, and it works quite well. But keep the fruit less sweet.
Okay.
30 years ago, when I started in this, we could use the term sour for fruit. It's impossible to get sour fruit now. We don't have it. So less sweet, berries, whatever you can find that's not too sweet. Don't go for mangoes or the sweeter kind of fruits.
Yeah. Okay. And would we are going to talk about our protein powder in a moment, but would having a casein protein shake be a good start, or is that more of an afternoon?
No, that works brilliant. Casein protein, and that goes under this bracket of casein protein, is obviously the protein shake.
Mm-hmm.
It's also the yogurt, the full fat natural yogurt. It would also be cheese, so halloumi, cheddar, anything like that. Casein protein is wonderfully slow release. Now, when it comes to shape, I get very excited about casein protein. It's very slow release, which means it breaks down really slowly. So in the same way carbohydrates, you hear of slow release or fast release carbohydrates, or you might hear of low glycemic and high glycemic. We're talking about a similar thing here. Low glycemic foods don't cause the body to release much insulin. High glycemic cause a bigger release. So we normally talk about that when we come to carbohydrates. So your breads and your pastas and sugars, basically. But proteins are slow or fast release. They're low or high glycemic too. And casein is low glycemic. It digests really slowly, which means it breaks down into the protein, the amino acids, and the sugars, and they go into the bloodstream nice and slowly. So there's very little insulin rise, which means it's much easier to stay in shape. Other proteins can be high glycemic, so they break down much more quickly. It also means you stay fuller for much longer. Now, as I said, this goes for any kind of casein protein food. You stay fuller for much longer. You're not going to crave. And then there's another exciting thing, apart from the fact that they're really highly absorbed. So you firm up very quickly with these kind of proteins. Great for muscle tone. There's this lovely little research to show that casein-rich foods, seem to help the body excrete fat. So you actually lose more fat with them too, which is another little exciting thing. So I find casein proteins versus other proteins, when it comes to the waistline and the tummy measurements, it can help there too. It can help them reduce. So great to go with the casein protein shake, definitely.
And
yeah.
how does it work in terms of if you're making a shake and you add other bits into that? How does that affect? So I would generally always put some blueberries, a banana, and I have semi-skim milk with it. Does that then affect?
It affects it, but it still works super well.
Okay.
So depending what you mix with it, obviously you're eating that too. That goes without saying.
Yes.
The advantage of dairy milk, as opposed to the nut milks and the oat milks, is the dairy milk has further protein and a little bit of lactose. Now, it's not a huge amount in it. The protein powder itself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving an extra hack here. We only wanted two, but you're getting a third one. The protein powder itself will help almost cover or slow down the release of the lactose out of the sugar.
Okay.
The sugar out of the milk. Apologies, let me rephrase that. The protein powder itself will help slow down the release of the lactose from the milk, which is the sugar from the milk into the bloodstream. Put it another way, if you have milk on its own, just a glass of milk, it does a protein, which is great. It has lactose, which is the sugars, which aren't bad for you. But then you can get a little bit of a sugar spike with that. But now if you add extra protein to that, it all breaks down much more slowly.
Right.
So you don't get the same sugar hit. So it works very well.
Okay.
It's why yogurt would work better than just the milk on its own. It tends to be slower release.
Mhm.
So the hack attached to that, just to clarify it, when you said, could I have, you might have your blueberries as a snack. If you had some protein with those blueberries, you won't get the same sugar hit.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So are we better to have a protein shake that doesn't have the other stuff in if we're wanting to get in shape?
Really good question.
Obviously, it's nice for I mean, I
Yeah.
like it because
I,
I like the
I,
flavour. I
I,
like putting extra
I
bits in. I feel like
think
it's good for me. But
yeah, the fistful of berries I think are fine.
yeah.
I don't think it's really going to take away from it. I really don't. So I think you'll get away with that. Would you get into shape faster without them? We're going to be playing around science here. A small fistful. Sorry, guys. I really hope I don't confuse anyone with what I'm about to say next. A small fistful of blueberries with the protein. That little bit of a sugar hit from the blueberries.
Yeah.
A little bit of instant
Yeah.
rice helps the body use the protein better. So
Okay.
you tone up fat those
Okay.
blueberries. So if you're
Yeah.
looking for toning as well, add the
Mhm.
blueberries. It helps.
Okay. Okay. It is a balance. It's a fine balance, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Pretty confused. Let's run through these three hacks now that we've jumped from 2 to 3 so we haven't
Yeah.
confused. The
Yeah.
first is find the gap. Don't just graze. Have meals. Put it on a plate. Sit down. If you need to eat 4 times a day, eat 4 times a day,
Yeah.
but don't just graze. The second is get the first meal right. Particularly looking for it to get rid of belly fat. You want to keep the sugar levels steady, which in turn keeps the insulin steady. So get rid of the main carbs out of that. Keep it more to protein foods and fat foods, but a little bit of fruit, like your berries, will be fine. And the third thing is, if you do feel like something sweet, or you do feel like that inverted commas snack, this does tie in with the point number one. Add protein to it, make it more into a complete meal. That protein slows down that sugar release. And
Yeah.
inversely, what we mentioned there, that little bit of sugar release helps you absorb the protein.
Yeah.
So you get a better result.
Yeah.
Hope that
Okay.
makes
Good. Good roundup. So moving on to supplements to help us get in shape. Um, we have touched upon protein powder. Is there more you would like to say on that in terms of why it works so well for
Yeah,
us?
we've tied that one in already, haven't we? So, well, I've said it, I could repeat it all again, but I won't. It's just super handy.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not going to sit here and argue that the protein powder is better for you than food as such. It is just food. It's just the casein out of your cottage cheese, for example. Cottage cheese is very high in casein. Your yogurt's very high in casein. So it's literally is just food. It
Yeah.
comes in very handy when you're looking to get into shape because you're getting pure protein unless you add anything extra into it. You're getting pure protein without anything else.
Yeah.
Filling, and that can be hard to do normally, if that makes sense. And particularly if you're running around on the go and you're just trying to grab something quickly, it'll keep you fuller for longer.
Yeah.
You won't crave in the same way, which really helps. And if you simply were hungry and needed something randomly in the middle of the day, if you took one of those, it's not going to blow any plan to get into shape. If anything, it'll help it along.
Okay. And when, if you were wanting to sort of take one in and around training, what's the time period?
I've
Is
protein.
it good? Yeah.
It's and again, many of you have heard me say this before. So if you're doing short, high intensity training for the benefits of that, and we can talk about that in a moment. But if you're someone who does short, high intensity training and you go for the blitz, like HIIT as they call it, the interval training, or just kind of sprints, that kind of thing, give it a good gap of at least an hour either side, and if possible, two.
Okay.
And that works really well to get the maximum hormonal hit from the training. Can we have your protein powder and water? Yes, you most certainly can. 100%, no problem at all. Thanks, Tracy. The with If you're doing longer training
Mhm.
sessions, then it's worth considering eating either side because you need to replenish the body and get the protein back in. Because chances are, if you've gone beyond 45 minutes of training, chances are your body is now going to be eating into your glycogen and muscle stores to
Right.
keep you going. So then you will need to replenish those.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, we will come on to fitness in one moment, but just talking about Amino Slim next. Now, there's lots of conversations happening in the media about fat loss supplements, and obviously there's drugs that you can take that I've been reading a lot about recently, which just slightly terrify me. What's your view on that, and also why does Amino Slim work so well?
Right. My view, generally speaking, view when it comes to anything, when it comes to medications, and make no mistake, some of the things that people are using are medication, regardless of where they get them from, their medications.
Yeah.
My view on anything like that is that really should be a last resort.
Yeah.
End of. I'm not entirely against different approaches, genuinely now, but I would always go for last resort. And this goes for anything, with any ailment, anything, regardless of what the challenge or ailment or illness was. I'd always look to see, can you do it through balancing up nutrition? Can you do it through healthy living, kind of exercise? Can you do it through supplements, vitamins, minerals, and kind of more natural means? And only then, if you can't, do you resort to further means as such, because quite frankly, you want a healthier body. You don't just want to be in shape.
No.
You want to actually be strong and healthy. It's not just about shape.
It's not, it's that quick fix, I think, that sort of people think that they would then have to use an extreme method, whereas there are, like, hacks and tips and things that will have that quick impact,
completely,
but also support you now and in the future.
Yes. You can balance back your body, if you like, or get your body balance back up, I should say. And that will just get everything working. And you almost naturally fall into shape on the back of that, rather than hammering it from the outside in a different way, if that kind of makes sense. So that's my view on the medications. I'm going to park any other opinion on that for the moment. And then when it comes to more natural supplements, if you like, so herbs and so on and so forth, I always smile when we use the term herbs and natural together and assume just because it's natural, it's good for us. There's lots of natural things that are poisonous. So just because it's natural doesn't mean it is good. But considered safe herbs, let's put it that way. I'm not keen on herbal fat loss supplements. And to clarify what I mean here, traditionally described as thermogenic, caffeine-based ones are stimulant type ones. And I'm simply not keen on them because I can never take them. If I try and take the amount that's recommended, I'm high as a kite. I tried, it never works. I just could never, even in my 20s, I could never take the dose that was recommended to lose fat. I could take a fraction of it. It helped my energy, great for training, but I never could quite do it. So I'm not a huge fan of them. And I do think when in my 20s and for anyone in their 20s, I would think no harm, just if they work, fair play. When we hit our late 30s and 40s, I think our adrenals are already under a bit of pressure and any stimulants really aren't helpful. And bear in mind, our steroid hormones, our progesterone, our estrogen, I'm always saying this, and our testosterone, not most, but nearly half of those are produced by the adrenals. So we don't really want to be annoying the adrenals too much when we get to this point in life. I think we need to be supporting them. So I'm personally one that will steer clear of those forms. Lots of them out there. There's fat binders, which sort of grab the fat and help you excrete it. Natural one is CLA. CLA is an interesting one. You get it in most health stores. It's found naturally. This one I love. I love all the things that completely debunk all the things that are supposed to be healthy for us. CLA is a supplement you can buy in any health store that binds with fat and helps you excrete it. You get naturally in large animal fat that we've all been told is dangerous and have to avoid, had a natural supplement that we now take out and take artificially to help us get rid of fat. Nature kind of had it covered.
We were good.
We were good until we messed with it. Anyway, so those kind of ones, no harm. I'm not sure, again, if you're going more into the medical type of ones that bind fat, they make me nervous. There's benefits to fat. So I'm always nervous about taking things to left field to do that. Do we really want to do that? Or are we just better off, if we're going to do that, are you just better off reducing the fat intake in the diet, full stop? So that's my view on those. The Amino Slim, where does it differ? It's an amino acid. It doesn't bind with the fat, nor does it stimulate anything. You don't get hyper or anything from it. It's an amino acid. You get it in food, like in any protein food, an egg, fish, meat, any protein food, you'll find it in it. Or most of them, you'll find it naturally occurring. And it just simply supports a process that occurs naturally when we sleep and when we do high intensity training like a sprint. There's a natural hormonal hit, if you like. Natural growth hormone is released, insulin levels drop. It's why they recommend, believe it or not, weight training for diabetics, because it seems to help bring down sugar levels, bring down insulin levels. High intensity training does something similar. It's why sprinters have abs, Marathon runners don't always, because of that hormonal hit. And L-ornithine is one of the amino acids. There's others, but it's one of the amino acids that gets in behind that process and seems to support it. So you lose fat faster. And with all of these, and actually this goes for all of this process, if you're looking to get into shape, please go by measuring tapes before weight, unless you've got a serious amount of weight to lose. Now that's a different conversation. The weight is very helpful to watch. But when you've less to lose, if you're toning and firming, and the Amino Slim, the L-ornithine helps support the firming process as well, because it's both that occurs when you sleep and you do the training. Anything that improves muscle tone while you drop fat will often mean the weight can look like nothing's happening, but all the inches are going away. So it's really worth taking out the good old-fashioned measuring tape and measure the areas you want to see going down. At the end of the day, no one cares what you weigh.
No one needs to know.
No one needs to know. It's irrelevant.
It's
a guide.
And so with Amino Slim, if you were looking to get in shape, say with summer coming up, how long would you say to take it for? Is there a set amount of time? How consistent do you need to be?
I would, most people will take it for, it doesn't mean you need to do this, just to be clear, but most will take it for 2 to 3 months. You should start seeing results when it comes to measurements within about 10 days to 2 weeks. It works at its absolute best, in my experience, taking it before bed every night. And if you miss a night, so in other words, take it like a cycle, almost fully for a shorter time, rather than missing it here and there for a longer period of time. That seems to work the best. You must fast about the 2.5 hours beforehand. Come back to that. You must fast for about 2.5 hours beforehand, and you can drink water, herbal teas, and lights. So the best one I find is before bed. Take it as you go into bed. Stop eating for 2.5 hours beforehand. Take it every night. If you miss a night, take it if you wake up later in the night or first thing the next morning, and don't eat for about 2 hours or so after. That's the best sort of kickoff run. Now, for those of you who struggle taking it at night, the next best option, in my experience, is take it every morning on rising, and add in, if you don't exercise automatically about 20 minutes later, do between 1 up to a maximum of 5 minutes. 1 minute would even be enough. So that's all I'm asking for you. Either squats, like you could sit on the end of your bed, you could stand up and sit down, stand up and sit down, type of thing, squats. You could do full squats if you're fit enough and supple enough. You could do press ups. They could be full proper press ups, or just pressing against the bed, but just do a little blitz of exercise. It could be running up and down your stairs for a minute, as in just something that gets the heart rate right up. About 20 minutes later, that would count as exercise. So that's
20 minutes after you've taken it, though.
Give it a chance to get into the system. 20 minutes up to half an hour, not much more than half an hour after. So you could wake up, take it, 20 minutes, half an hour later. You know, you could go for a little sprint run outside if you wanted to, but it must be high intensity, so a walk wouldn't count. If that, something like a bit. But honestly, even 1 to 2 minutes of squats, like 60 to 100 squats,
you need
or as it's
feel that out of breath, like, and what was I going to say? Afterwards, how quickly can you eat or anything like that?
Give it about 2 hours for perfection. Even an hour would work, but for 2 hours would be better. So if you're someone doing that lovely sort of kind of intermittent fasting, then it's super easy.
So I'm just reading, Amanda said here, do you have to do exercises? I have long COVID and didn't do too much. What is the minimum?
Yes. Well, if you could, Amanda, take it before bed, that would be perfect. Then don't bother with it. And when it comes to exercise, when we talk about high intensity, and I say this cautiously, genuinely now, I really mean that, we really mean what's intense for you. So one person may find 10 squats and that's about it. The heart rate's up and it's done. What we're really looking at is getting that heart rate up, if you know what I mean. And maybe you do 10 squats. And by squats, I mean literally sit on the end of your bed, stand up, sit down, do it for 10. And then maybe rest for a minute or two. Do it like the interval training. Rest for a minute or two. Get the heart rate back down again and do it a second time. And do that 3 or 4 times. And that will work super well. But again, at your pace. seriously round out your pace.
Okay. And also just the other thing to add is, yeah, no food or drink if you were to
Yes,
take it in the evening. So have your 2.5 hours. You can have herbal teas, can't you? And
yes.
water, but you can't have like squash. You can't have a cup of
Well,
tea with milk and
looking at
sugar,
you,
anything like that.
exactly, Angie, looking at yours, you do intermittent fasting. Now, I'm not sure, Angie, if you're relating to what we're talking about here or just the intermittent fast, but if it's just the intermittent fast, there's a big question mark over that. Personally, I think you shouldn't have the milk. Some people say you get away with a splash of it. If it's the Amino Slim you're relating to here, the milk will interfere with it. So that's the answer to that one.
I am like you, Angie, though. I have to have a splash of milk in my tea in the morning. I can't not. So,
Yeah. So if it's just the intermittent fast,
yeah,
as you're saying there, it's I think you're personally I would say take it out. But there are those that would argue, and I'm not going to argue against it, just to be clear. They would argue if it's only a splash of milk that it's not enough to break the fast.
yeah,
Um, I try to lean towards getting it as clean as you can, so it would take it out.
yeah. Okay, good. um, and moving on to fitness. And one of these, I was guilty of one of these hacks that you say, which is don't overtrain.
Yes.
So I used to honestly think I have a Peloton, so I enjoy doing my spinning, and you can choose a variety of lengths to do. But I used to be thinking I had to do the 45-minute or the 60-minute. And if I did that, like it had to be so much better for me. The fact that my knees were sore and I ached and I lost all energy didn't come into the equation. But since I've been working with you, I've switched it up, and now I tend to do 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I enjoy it a lot more as well. But I feel the benefits are so much better for me. So why shouldn't we
Do
max
more,
ourselves
yes,
out and
more,
overtrain?
if not more, when it
No.
comes to training. Yeah, it's really not. It's an interesting one, that. I mean, apart from the fact that if you do less time, if it's particularly we're talking about here, less length of time, you're more likely to do it more regularly, enjoy it more, and jump in and do it rather than think, oh my God, I have to set aside. I mean, apart from
And
more of the practical aspects, physiologically, there is a difference.
yeah,
Short Now, I'm saying high intensity, and to repeat what I said earlier there, the intensity is the intensity for you. So in other words, it's not just because one person can either run at a certain pace or at a certain, has a certain
yeah,
strength in the gym, doesn't mean you will.
yeah,
It's whatever is your max, gets your heart rate up, gets you out of breath, is what
yeah,
counts. So short, high intensity training, we're talking about probably 10 to 20 minute sessions.
yeah,
And that intensity, and it might be interval training means you do maybe 30 seconds all out, and then you rest for 30 seconds up to a minute, and then you might do the same,
yeah,
approximately. Now, you might go up to 45 seconds all out, or you might go up to 2 minutes rest. You get your flow with it, and
yeah.
you repeat the cycle usually about 5 times. It'll vary.
Mhm.
That's roughly what will be done.
Yeah.
As that could be done with sprinting, it could be done on a bike, it can be done as a swim.
Mhm.
There's many ways you can play with that. Or you can do weight training where you go all out. But we're talking about short bursts of training. It could be a class. That has an impact on hormones, particularly, again, we mentioned this earlier when we talked about the Amino Slim, hormones like growth hormone, some of the steroid hormones, which really help repair and build lean muscle and lean body mass,
Mhm.
and also helps bring down insulin levels. And it's why sprinters don't tend to have any belly at all, but have abs.
Mhm.
It really targets it. It's hit better than weight training for losing belly fat. Not if you do the weight training with intensity. You do high intensity weight training, and then you cover two birds with one stone. I'm not going to kill the birds. I don't like killing them. Um, so, and I can come back to that in a second, what I really mean there. So that really targets the belly fat, and it does another thing. When you go into the 45 minutes of training, so you could argue, well, 45 minutes of the same thing, surely I'm going to do the same, because surely
Yeah.
in the first 20 minutes of that intense session, this is all happening. And the answer is yes, it is. But once you go too far, you begin to start, your body goes into a stress mode, and
Mm.
it doesn't have enough fuel, and it begins to release more cortisol. And that cortisol breaks down the glycogen and muscle stores. The very thing you're trying to build up, quite frankly, is the muscle. It acts as the sugars within the muscle and releases them into the bloodstream. So now in the initial stage of it, your blood sugar levels are going down. Now they're going back up again.
Right.
Because
Okay.
you're accessing the sugars through this muscle. So you're losing muscle and increasing the blood sugar levels. So now you're more likely to gain fat again. So you're actually,
All going wrong.
and then it goes down all the benefit.
Yeah.
So you will burn calories.
Yes.
You will burn calories. We're not arguing that one.
Yeah.
But the hormonal shift goes in reverse, the beneficial side of it.
Yeah.
So in my experience, you're better going all out for much shorter than longer duration. And even if it's only 10 minutes,
Yeah.
even if it's only 5 minutes, you get from a shape point of view a better result, particularly when we're talking about belly fat and toning up.
Yeah.
Super fast. If anyone gets this, I'll be very impressed, but I'll give it a shot. Back to the difference in the high intensity interval training, the HIIT, and weight training. Both of them have an impact on hormones. If you do proper weight training, even if you don't do it in the intense way I just briefly mentioned there, both will help improve the lean muscle, both help with the hormonal release, both help reduce insulin. So both are very good for shape. If you do proper weight training, it is aerobic. You do end up getting out of breath. But if you really want to get the double benefit, the way in my gyms in London, the way we used to do it was we did a form of, people call it drops. It's kind of a pyramid sets kind of thing where you start on a heavy weight and you go lighter and lighter. In English, what we used to do was a workout that would normally take 35 to 40, up to 45 minutes for a normal gym training session where you go in and you rest and then you go from one thing to the next. We used to do it in 15 minutes.
Okay.
So suddenly there was no resting. There's no resting between sets. There was no resting between exercises. And we were able to do it by starting on a heavier weight and going lighter, then lighter and moving. Now we combined high intensity training with the weight training, and then you get the best of both worlds. And now that worked.
Yeah. Okay. That is good. I also find if I was to do like longer, I don't give it the same intensity of effort.
Yeah.
Because I'm totally flagging by the end, because I don't change my eating whether I'm doing a long spin or a short spin. So actually, surely you're best to really achieve it well in 15, 20 minutes. And then, and then take the other 20 minutes for myself.
Right. And actually on that point, if anything, what happens when you go longer, and this does happen, and it's in part because you've just eaten into muscle reserve that the body needs to recover, and in part because your sugar levels may well have gone up because you've broken down the muscle and released it, it can make you crave and be hungrier.
Yes.
So when you go into those longer sessions, you're far more likely to want to eat more. And that can defeat the purpose when it comes to the nutritional side of getting into shape.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of snacking, though, exercise snacking, which I love that expression. I think it's so good. So yeah, tell us about it.
I've spent so many decades telling people to stop snacking that every time I hear the exercise snack, I'm like, really? But yes, it's a good way of describing it. And it ties in very nicely with the short hit, if you like, which is honestly, do not underestimate the power of what we were talking about earlier when you're taking the Amino Slim, of 1 minute of squats. Honestly, if you just they can be so impactful, and it does hit the abdominal area. So many people are trying to lose weight around the middle. It's the biggest compound exercise that targets that area. So squats, press ups, those kind of things are great. And if you have, say, back issues or knee issues, then the key is just to start at your pace. If you've knee issues, maybe go with the press up direction. If you've shoulder issues, go with the squat direction. If you know what I mean, you can play with it. And you can start with things, as I said earlier, when it comes to squats, just start with sitting up and standing down from a sofa. That's all a squat is. Just do that. Or with a press up, just start leaning against your countertop in your kitchen when you're waiting for the kettle to boil. And that will work that. But 1 minute, or if you're going for a walk, just break out into a run for 20 seconds and just go as fast as you can. Just run. If you're in the country and you see there's a gate coming up, just run to that gate. And then stop, then walk, and then run to the next one. It can be really quick. If you're sitting at your desk, just stand up, sit down for about 60 of them, and then go back to work.
It
makes a difference.
That's what I need to start introducing, because I do. We sit at a desk all day and I get up and go and make a cup of tea, but then I don't do anything. So whilst I'm at the kettle, I'm going to start to do some side
Yeah,
press ups.
do it. And if you do it gently and slowly, at least you'll be working the tricep and chest muscles and you'll be toning them. If you get good intensity and get as many out as you
Yeah.
can and get your heart rate up and get a little bit out of breath, now you'll probably have a little hormonal impact.
Yeah.
And you'll have a little bit of growth hormone kick, a bit of insulin kick.
Mm.
And if you get a lovely rhythm of doing this and you really are serious and you really want to blitz things, take your Amino Slim about 20 minutes before you do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And
You can
then,
do that twice a day, it wouldn't matter, and you'll get more out of it.
so could you take, sorry, we say about Amino Slim at night or in the morning. Could you take it like in the afternoon if you hadn't eaten for 2.5 hours?
100%, 100%.
Okay.
So if
Okay.
you've had your lunch, say at around about 1 o'clock, anytime after then three, am I right? 3:30, 3, yeah, 3:30, you
Yeah.
could take, and then
Okay.
20 minutes later,
Do,
do a
yeah.
little bits of something.
The
Um,
other the other exercise snack I've been doing recently is when I brush my teeth, I do squats because I'm stood there for 2 minutes. So I figure I might as well do something for my legs and my bottom at the same time. So yeah, any more of these tips that
work.
anyone else has, then share them with us
Yeah,
because
please
so
do.
yes. Lovely. Okay, well that wraps us up for today, I think, Zana. So we've obviously covered the points for nutrition, supplements, and fitness. I'll put all the details in the comment section here. But we are hoping to do some more hacks. So if anyone's interested in us doing a second live with some more hacks, because she's got more than two for each of those areas, then we'll do another live on that soon.
Brilliant.
Perfect. Lovely. Thank you everyone that joined, and thank you so much for your time, Zana.
Thank you very
Speak
much.
to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.